Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Think, Engage, Thrive, where we try and bring you the best and the brightest in entrepreneurship today. We don't like boring stories. We try and go out and look for people with exciting new propositions and see what they're doing out there and bring them on and let you listen to what they're doing, why they're doing it, and hopefully it inspires you to go out there and take that first step to entrepreneurship. Today, we have a unique business opportunity or a unique business. We have Monica Fullerton, who started a website called Spousely. And, you know, websites are a dime a dozen, but this one is very specific with a very specific mission. So I'm just going to give you a little bit of a background on Monica, and then we'll hear her talk about Spousely and what she did and why she did it. But she married her high school sweetheart. He was an Air Force. He's in the Air Force, so she's an Air Force wife. And she learned that the military community was ripe with creators, makers, and entrepreneurs. So many of the spouses, as you can imagine, I don't know, I'm sure many of you are familiar with being in the military, but they have their passions between deployments and full-time businesses, and there really wasn't a place where they could all put and sell their stuff. So think of Etsy, but very focused on the military, first responders, things like that. So the people that are producing and selling on the platform are from military families. So she also has twins. She's also got a dog, and we all love dog lovers. So let's bring her on and we can talk to her and she can tell you her story instead of me botching it. So hi, Monica. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. Welcome.
Good. Thanks for having me, and thanks for the story there. It's always fun to hear someone else explain your story. I was over there smiling, so
Yeah, yeah.
I like the dog lover piece.
I'm always a big fan of dog lovers. I think that it always tells me something about somebody's personality when they love their dog. So
That is true, but ours you cannot call a dog. She gets very
I
offended.
know.
She's a human, okay, Phil? She's my first baby.
Yeah, dogs and kids. That's what life's all about for us.
Yeah, for sure.
So why don't you give us a little bit of your background? What you've done, and then what led you up to this point. So
Yeah, so I am a corporate businesswoman turned entrepreneur out of my own pure frustration and inspiration as a military spouse. So as you mentioned, I married my high school sweetheart and he was commissioning into the Air Force, and I was just finishing my master's in South Florida. And I honestly wasn't quite sure if it was the life that I was going to want to live. So we kind of went back and forth on it, just because for those that might not know, military families usually relocate every 2 to 3 years, which makes it really hard for spouses to hold a career doing something they truly love, if one at all. And so when I finished my master's, I ended up to go for it. We went for it and got stationed in our first location, which was San Antonio, Texas. And I just remember feeling so lost because I went to school for broadcasting and communications. I had big dreams of becoming the next Oprah, being able to tell people stories, to inspire one another. It was really just the power of communication. And, I got really lucky when we got stationed in Texas because I found a great company, but I totally had to pivot in my, career goals. I ended up in logistics. And I remember thinking in that interview, what is logistics? I have no idea what logistics actually is. But I loved, what the opportunity looked like. I loved what the company looked like, what they were offering me. And, that was kind of the first real, moment of what military life was probably going to look like, just the pivoting and having to possibly put, my own career dreams and goals on the side. But I was very lucky. I stayed with them for almost a decade. I continued to work my way up. I was working remote, but I started to realize that a lot of my fellow military spouse friends were not able to piece the puzzle together, whether it was, actually finding a career at all or, being able to do something they loved. And I started to realize there were a lot of entrepreneurs in our space, that there was just so much talent, whether it was, selling coffee, creating woodworking products, starting a marketing company, whatever it might be. But there was not one central location for people to go and shop and support these
Yeah.
businesses. Yeah. So it kind of all there's a whole long story, and I'm trying to, sum it all up and as fast as possible. But at the end of the day, I started doing my market research, and I saw that there are millions of businesses owned by military and first responder families.
Yeah.
And with me being a spouse myself, I knew the unique challenges that our community faces. And I wanted to create a place where people could not only shop and support, but also really bridge the gap between our world and the civilian world and go above and beyond to thank you for your service.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's interesting because it's no matter where you go in the world, you can run it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what, we've seen, and I'll share, a fun fact with you, because I think this is really eye-opening to someone who might not really know kind of what our world looks like. But there are over, this quote is from the Military Spouse Chamber of Commerce, and there are over 12 million military spouses between active duty and veteran, and 48% of them are small business owners, aspire to be, or self-employed.
Wow.
So that's a pretty huge number if you think about it. And obviously, other marketplaces that are out there are open to everyone, which is totally fine. But what I wanted to create was that really unique online marketplace for anyone to come to shop and support our nation's heroes.
Yeah, anyone can shop, right? It's just
Anybody, yeah.
Anybody can shop. It's just that the products that are sold are produced or sold by
Yep.
military or first responders, correct?
Yes, which I think has been
From around the
really
world.
around the world. Yeah, so we're mostly, nationwide, but we have some vendors that are stationed overseas as well. And it's just been a great opportunity for us to really bridge that gap between doing what we love while living a life on the go. And Spousely's just turned into, like I said, so much more than a place to shop. We're that community that is supporting one another on this journey.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really interesting when you think about it, right? When you think about just being focused.
Yeah.
Having something that's really focused on. So when Etsy first came out, it was focused on creators. It sort of turned into a different thing now. I think everybody can sell on Etsy, but it was focused on people creating. But when you do something that's really focused on a community, I think it resonates a lot clearer.
Yeah, and I had a small business with my mother-in-law on the side from my corporate career, and we're like one of the first few companies. I remember when Etsy first launched, we were so excited to be on it, and honestly, it was the best thing ever because it gave us that outlet and it allowed us to connect with other creators and makers. But over time, it just kind of felt like that community aspect kind of got lost in the mix when they did open their doors to really anybody outside of even the maker world, which is fine. But with Spousely, what's really nice is we have vendors that have actually decided to only sell on Spousely, meaning they sell exclusively on Spousely, which is a huge opportunity for us to all continue growing and scaling together.
Yeah, that's fantastic. How many vendors do you have on?
So we launched right before the pandemic, so great timing. But we have continued to prove our mission is viable and impactful. So we have over 600 vendors, and we're adding more on a weekly basis. And that has been with no marketing on the vendor side. So that's all just been word of mouth. For me, it was really important because I am a bootstrapping founder to make sure that the tech was scalable, to make sure that we could support more vendors as they're adding more products and needing more features on the front end and on the back end. And so now we're at a place where we know it's scalable and we're really ready to take it to the next level. But it's scary, it's exciting, but at the same time, it's heavy because you're building something that is supporting so many others' dreams and businesses that you want to make sure you're doing it right along the way.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we were talking about this on the last show, and we talk about it actually multiple times, that scaling or having a business and then scaling and starting to move, it's scary. And it's
It
always
is.
scary for people. Some people just sort of hit that wall where they have to make a decision. Are we just going to stay this small business, or are we going to start to really scale? And
Yeah.
some people get to the point where they just don't have it in them. And at that point, they either shut it down and move on or whatever. And I'll tell you the same thing I tell every entrepreneur is that you're not going to die.
Yeah.
The worst thing that happens is you fail, or you
Yeah.
have to sell, or you have to close down, but you're not going to die, and you're going to be okay because you have,
Yeah.
friends and family around you. Right. And I think fear gets into the head of a lot of entrepreneurs. And that, I think, is the difference between those who succeed and those who don't.
Yeah. And you mentioned something about the wall because it's something that I actually have been saying probably for a good 6 months now as we have continued to grow and scale is that I feel like I am the wall to Spousely's true success because I'm trying to juggle it all. I'm still, self-funding, and that is at times, a slower build and a slower grow because there's only so much that I can do myself and with my small team. But at the end of the day, where the power really is at is in our community. We are all, right there with a shovel building and growing from the ground up. All of our vendors are working so hard to spread the word about Spousely because we all believe in having a place like Spousely. But it is really important as a founder to recognize when you do get to that place where you're like, okay, what am I going to do to make things, to have a different outcome and to be able to get past that wall, because you don't want to be the reason that you're holding back the growth because you are scared of what's next.
Yeah. Well, capital is always a problem, but if you
Yeah.
prove out the model and you prove out what that you can generate sales and that you have customers, because
Yeah.
that's always the obstacle. And and again, I mentor a lot of entrepreneurs and a lot of young guys, men and women, and
Mhm.
they think that they're going to write this business plan and they're
Yeah.
going to present it to a few people and they're going to walk away
Yeah.
with checks. And it doesn't
Right.
work that way. And I
Yeah.
tell them all, before you do anything, go out and prove that you can get a customer who wants to buy what you're selling. And in your
Yes.
case, you have two customers because you have to get the sellers
Yep.
excited about being on there and the buyers excited about being on there because you're actually the middleman. But I
Yes.
think you've proven that, and so now it's time to you know move it forward.
Yeah, and that is something that, people always tell me, they're like, do you realize that you probably went into one of the hardest industries to grow and build as a, bootstrapping solopreneur? And honestly, what I always tell other founders when I talk to them too, and they ask me how I've been able to get this far in such a short amount of time. And I always say it's perfection is not the key to success. And
No.
I never, if I would have known that Spousely would have continued to turn into what it is today and what it will continue to turn in, I probably would have never gotten started. It would have been so scary from the start. But because I went into it having no idea what to expect, I just knew I wanted to create a greater impact in our community. I honestly have just been like flying by the seat of my pants because you just really don't know what's coming next. And, as a first time founder myself at a company like this, you just learn so much as you go and you just continue to use everything, whether it's a negative or a positive, as your building block to where you're trying to get to.
Yeah, no question. No
Yeah.
question. Yeah, we talk about failure a lot. We talk about obstacles a lot because I've never had, and we talk about the pivot
Yeah.
a tremendous amount because we've never had a startup that
Yeah.
hasn't had all of those things, which I'm sure that there were some times along the path where you thought, oh my God, we're not going to make it. Or, oh,
Yeah. Of course. And, as a military spouse, I always say pivoting is our middle name. We're super used to all of that. So it is part of the reason why our community does make such great entrepreneurs, is because we're not fazed by as much stuff as maybe, a civilian might be, because it's just part of our daily life. You just never know what's coming next or what to expect.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, I feel like, failure, I always say, like, I would be lying if I said, everything's great and it's dandy. And, that's kind of the problem I feel like with today's startup world is everybody sees everybody else's success from the outside. And it really plays a toll on founders who maybe are still growing and building and trying to figure it out. I mean, we all are at the end of the day. I've talked to many very successful companies on the outside, over the past few months. But once you actually talk to them, you're like, wait a second, you're going through that same thing and I am? Like, that seems crazy. So it's very common, but I want to see, and something that I said from the start of my journey is I will continue to share all of the real, especially on my LinkedIn, all the ups and the downs. I know they say don't play all your cards, in business, but I'm really bad at poker and playing cards. So I do play all my cards because I put everything out there in hopes that my journey can help inspire somebody else on theirs.
Yeah, that's the primary reason that I decided to do this show was because, again, I mentor a lot of young entrepreneurs. I do a lot of work with incubators, and we do a lot of work in our agency with startups, and we try and help them. And you're right. They get a misguided approach because they listen to, some of the bigger names out there and they think, oh my God, I'm not perfect. And, look at how easy it was for these guys to scale. And it's all BS because I don't care who you are. You read the paper every day. I read the business news every day. And there are companies that started up 4 or 5 years ago, got $100 million in funding, and they're shutting down because they hit the wall, and it turns out that they don't have a great model. Just because you can raise money. I mean, you look at what you call it, Elizabeth Holmes, who raised all that money. You look at WeWork, you raised all that money, but you didn't have a model, right? Just because you can raise the money doesn't mean you have a model. The rearview mirror of business is littered with failed companies that raised a ton of money. So that's why I tell people, don't worry so much about the money. Worry so much about whether or not you can build a customer, and they're going to tell you whether you have a model. And you don't have to be perfect. You're going to make mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes. And your logo is going to change. Your brand may even change. Your business model is going to change. It has to be flexible because you wrote it on paper. It was in your head. Maybe you wrote it down, you built a business plan, but it was in your head. You don't know what's going to happen until you start getting customers and in your case, sellers.
Yeah. And going back to the raising capital piece, I really want to touch on that because I felt over the past year as we were entering into the growth phase of Spousely, the pressure was so real that it felt like if you didn't raise capital, who are you? Are you even serious about scaling your business? And so I went down that path last year. I was like, okay, I'm going to talk to investors. I'm going to get everything ready, spend all this money. It's not cheap getting ready to raise capital. Honestly, I feel like I don't know if I did it all wrong or what. I mean, I did. I went through a lot, but it's expensive to get ready to raise when you have to, get all the documents and structure and everything. And now looking back at it, I was forcing it and it just didn't feel good. It didn't feel like the right fit for a company like Spousely that is mission driven. That's all about our community and our people, because at the end of the day, as soon as you raise capital, it just depends on what your business is, but it's go time in terms of numbers, which is great. And it helps you continue, to fulfill what you want to do, but not all businesses are meant to raise capital. And so once I finally got that through my brain of this does not feel good, this does not feel like the right path for Spousely, now I have approached the past 6 months and going into the new year on really a clear game plan. And for us, it's continuing to align with the right partners or one main big partner that can help us continue to scale and grow. And those conversations have been going so much better. It's the right people, they understand what we're building. They understand the impact beyond just an e-commerce marketplace. And that is something that I believe is so important for founders, listening and out there is it don't force something because everybody else is doing it. You really need to find time to figure out if it's the right fit for your business, because not everybody else is working in your business.
We've had I can't tell you how many founders that have raised money on the show that have said the same thing.
Yeah.
Don't do it until
Yeah.
you absolutely know that that's the right thing to do for your business. A lot of times, I think founders raise capital, especially structured capital, PE, VC, something like that, family offices, because they view it as a badge of honor. Well, I
Yeah.
raised capital. But from somebody who has done it, and we raised money for a business we had at one point, and we thought we were king of the hill because we raised a significant sum, private
Yeah.
equity. And when you really think about it, see, you don't recognize the cost of raising that money
Yeah.
until you sell the business and you realize that you just essentially got a long-term loan, because
Yes.
the preferred shares with the coupon, that money goes back, the investment goes back, and they get to keep the common shares.
Yeah.
So it's amazing that people still they don't pay attention. We were guilty of it. So I applaud the fact that you chose not to do it. And I also applaud the fact that you thought strategically, and whoever you're talking to is more strategic,
Yeah.
because from that point on, every other business that I've done, I've always raised capital strategically. People who
Yeah.
have a vested interest in what we were doing, whether it was a supplier, whether it was a manufacturer, whether it was somebody. And that got us, a lot further.
Yeah, because I see it as a true partner versus
Right.
just a,
Money.
money partner. It's
Yeah.
somebody
Money's
that
expensive.
who, yeah, absolutely. And I wish more of those stories were shared. And I know it's probably hard, when founders are in the heat of it because they can't really, after they've raised all this money, kind of go out there and be public facing and say, man, I wish I didn't do that. Because obviously they're fulfilling all of their obligations and that's what they want to do. But I was recently listening to Damon John on a podcast, and he said something, and maybe I'm just learning about this about his story, which probably is true because I'm always behind on things. But he said something that I think most people need to really realize, that it is not just all investors, and because he's an investor. But anyways, he said his early days of Fubu, he continued to work at Red Lobster for 3 years to keep self-funding Fubu as his hobby passion project. He said if he would have taken on capital that early on in the business, he would have never been able to fulfill what the investors wanted, and it would have just put him completely out of business. But
Yeah.
because he did it slow and he continued to maintain his day job to fund his passion project, he was able to turn it into whatever, the 350 million company. And obviously along the way, there's going to be different change points where you do have to make decisions. You do have to bring in some more help and support. But I think there's just so much pressure right now on going all in. Like, people message me all the time. They're like, how did you know when it was right to go all in on Spousely? And I feel like if I could have done it differently and I could have turned back the clocks, I would probably still have been working my corporate job and just continue to, build Spousely as my passion project. Because the second that I stopped working my corporate job is the second that I turned into more of a snail on this journey, because now I didn't have what allowed me to get so far from building the tech and everything, because I don't have that money coming in anymore.
Yeah. No, you're 100% right. I mean, it is about timing, whether or not the time is right to raise
Yeah.
people from outside, or do you just keep funding it, or do you find a strategic partner? Those are
Right.
all valid questions, and we've had plenty of. One of the first people we had on the show, a couple of young guys that I just love to death, and I helped them on early on, but they were building this app,
Uh-huh.
and you can never tell. First of all, something you said before, why aren't more people talking about this to get entrepreneurs? Entrepreneurs aren't going to hear it. They think, again, raising capital is a badge of honor. So
Yeah.
we think that I'm going to go out and build an AI company. I'm going to go out and raise $100 million, and then I'm going to be somebody.
Yeah.
So that's all about ego. So they're not going to listen.
Yeah.
True entrepreneurs who are focused and want to build something and have a mission, they're always going to listen, and they're not going to raise capital until the time is right. But we had these young guys on, and they were building this app, and it wasn't working, but I never, ever in my life have told an entrepreneur not to do something. I just
Yeah.
point out the stats and say, are you paying attention to this? Are you paying attention to that? And let them draw their own conclusion. But these guys were hustling. They were building this app and they weren't making enough money with it. And so they were driving Ubers at night and,
Mhm.
doing all this stuff. And then one day, they were doing this for about 3 years, and it was just painful to watch because I
Yeah.
knew what the problem was, and I kept trying to point it out in a positive way. And finally, they realized it themselves. But what they realized was, we had a meeting one day, or we had a discussion, and they said, we're not going to carry forward. We can't do it because it's not going to work. I
Yeah.
said, okay. But they said, but we had this brainstorm last night because we learned all about building apps by doing this. And we learned all about how to manage the metrics and how to understand the metrics. And we realized people don't understand that. So they pivoted and
Mhm.
they basically turned the company into something totally different. And now, 4 or 5 years later, they've got this great lifestyle business where they're building apps and,
That's awesome.
teaching people the metrics and building dashboards for the metrics. So they're
Yeah.
totally different, but they're never going to raise capital because they just like it as a lifestyle business.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. And that's kind of, what it takes sometimes is really, they always say you got to kind of hit the rock bottom to be able to, bounce back up. One of my friends in the military space, she's a veteran. She just wrote a book and I believe it's, rock bottom has a trampoline or something along those lines. It's amazing because it is really true. I mean, you have to really be willing to change or figure out what is going on, like you said. Otherwise, you're just going to keep staying at the same place. Lucky for me, I am very, I won't allow that to happen. I've already set, some timelines on myself of where I want to see Spousely go over the next, year, and I will do whatever it takes to get it there.
Yeah.
I am on a mission to make it a household name, but I know I can't do that alone. So,
Yeah. 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 Well, like I said, strategic partnerships are so much better than just taking money. And the
yeah,
other piece about it, you were talking about raising capital before and the expense of raising capital. I'm not sure what, the documentation you're referring to but, you know, but the real cost to me of raising capital is the time it takes because it's
yeah,
a time suck because you're trying to build this business, but now you have to spend your time going out and raising money. You got to have meetings. And pre-COVID, you were going to physical meetings. Today you
yeah,
can get on, but physical meetings, and you had to do a lot of them because it's a numbers game. You have to
yeah,
knock on 100 doors in order to get 20 meetings, and out of those 20 meetings, you're only going to get one person that's interested. So,
yeah.
you start thinking about how that works. That to me is the true cost because it's a cost of taking you away from your core business.
Yeah. And once I started to turn those conversations, those investor, that all that time I was spending talking to, different investors and everything that just didn't get it, turn that into conversations with potential, partners and people that can be vendors or customers or whatever it might be. I mean, that has had such a huge impact and has continued to move us, 10 times faster forward than just, trying to explain something to someone that they just don't see the light at the end of the tunnel sometimes. So not everybody is going to get it, and your business isn't going to be for everybody, but really being able to niche down and to know, like you said, what your mission is, who you're serving, what you want to do with the company is really important. And I feel like we definitely have mastered that piece. It's just the continuous change that's going to need to happen as we are growing, so that way we can adapt to, all the new vendors, customers, and opportunities.
We had a guy many years ago who one of the companies that we started, he bought it, and he told me once because he was an investor, but he had a manufacturing facility, so he wanted the brand. But anyway, he said to me, investors are like bees to honey. He said
Mm-hmm.
he said they go in a pack. Said
Yeah.
they don't know. One guy doesn't know, oh, here's the honey, or
Yeah.
here's, he said they hear about it and they all jump on it. They
Yeah.
don't do their due diligence necessarily. So most of the time, investors aren't necessarily smart. They just have money. right? It's two entirely different things.
And it's so mind blowing to me because, maybe it's just right now the world that we live, but like being an investor is like so trendy right now. That's
Oh,
also trending.
yeah,
And
everybody.
so everybody's popping up, like you said, all these different VCs and, investing and doing whatever. But at the end of the day, I mean, they're doing just as much work. They're going to have to put in just as much work as the founder if they want it to be successful. But I don't think that those that are not, really educated in actually what that looks like or have ever been on the other side, which that is something that blows my mind, is that there are so many investors and those going into the VC world that have never actually been a founder. And to me, that's so mind blowing because I feel like you have to at least know something a little bit more about entrepreneurship or going through the trenches as a founder if you're going to serve founders. I don't know. That's just my own personal opinion, but I feel like just with a lot of like the different masterminds and cohorts and stuff. And when you find out somebody's like leading it that has never been a founder or an entrepreneur, I'm like, it just doesn't make sense to me because how can you relate to a founder and teach them all these things if you've never experienced that life?
Yeah, investors have a high regard for themselves. Well, first of all, I'll tell you that most of the newer investors, the people that put it on their LinkedIn and say I'm an investor, they're all full of it. Maybe they put $10,000 into something. That's not investing. Most VCs and PE guys, true PE guys, don't want to touch you unless they can put 10 million in. And that's because of legal fees and the due diligence costs.
Right.
And a lot of them will partner with 3 or 4 other so that they mitigate that investment. So if you need 10 million, they'll get 3 or 4 other groups together and put in 2.5. Those are real investors. And a lot of times those guys aren't necessarily, don't necessarily need to know how to be a founder, but they've been involved in enough businesses that they understand what the problem is. But a lot of these young guys that are out there having masterminds and cohorts and things like that, they're just looking for somebody like, that's not so savvy to say, well, here, I'll get involved with you and we'll go out and raise the money together. I'll put a little bit in and then we'll go out and raise the money. And then they wind up, being part of your business because they need something to do. So
I know the biggest piece of advice that I always give is just, surround yourself with the people that inspire you or someone that's done something similar, like in the industry or has the background, somebody that you can just kind of latch onto as a mentor and have them as your shining light, because there are going to be so many people. I feel like I'm just constantly, I meet so many people and people will see my journey or whatnot. And sometimes there's not so great people, but when you find the people that really truly want to see you succeed, I mean, you've got to hold on to them on this journey.
Yeah. A long time ago, I'm not a good networker because I don't really have time for the BS. I can sniff it really quickly and I don't have the patience or the time for it. I do what I do and, I'm happy to do it. So,
I learned the most, I say, from my younger days. I always grew up around entrepreneurs, whether it was my own family or my friends' parents. All my friends were always so mad at me because I would come over to their house and I'd sit at their kitchen table and I would just ask their parents all these questions. So how'd you start this business? What did you do? Like, I remember being so young and just always wanting to learn from their parents because those are some true nuggets that you just really can't get anymore these days, just because it's hard to find out what's real and what's not.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think what I've seen, in my opinion, I see too many of these groups coming together, like these it's sort of in the incubator world and the accelerator world. You get these, I guess, mastermind classes or whatever it is. And everybody thinks that they have to go to all of them because they want to be seen. And 90% of it, it's just a waste of time rather than seeking out the successful entrepreneurs that I know seek out the mentor or the person to get advice from that they know. And I don't care who it is. I'll tell you, I have no problem calling anyone And I
I'm the
don't
same
care if
way. Yeah.
yeah, I don't care if it's the CEO of, Verizon.
Whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll call him and ask him questions, and I'll send him a message saying, "Hey, can we talk for 15 minutes? I want to
Yeah.
understand." And those people, I think, make good use of time. People who go into network and cohorts, you wind up in a spinning circle.
I
And
agree.
the other thing is, I tell everybody, don't pay attention to competition. Don't pay attention to who
Mm.
your competitors are. You want to be aware of them, but don't compare yourself to them. We have a client who constantly compares themselves to their competitors, and I showed
Mm.
them the numbers. Finally, I got so frustrated, I just went and ripped the competitors' sites apart, and I showed it to him, and I said, "You keep comparing yourself to these guys. These guys are failing. They're dying.
Yeah.
Look at their
Yeah.
trend lines, and you're sitting there trying to compare yourself to them. Don't do
Yeah.
it. Focus on what you want to do, and so
Oh yeah.
yeah,
Just be authentic, and obviously you get where you're at because of that. And I feel like from a buyer standpoint, whether it's a consumer or whoever, is on the other end of it, they immediately see that people buy from people who they like, and
yeah,
your company is a direct reflection of that. And I feel like that's been our saving grace of it, just because I have been so open and just sharing my journey and my story. I mean, people definitely, if they don't know me already, know that like I just am an open book. And unfortunately, that open book can sometimes bite you in the ass in business, but I can't change who I am and the way that I operate, both in my, professional and business life and personal, because it's all the same to me.
yeah,
So I'm Monica Fullerton. You get the same out of me no matter what, if we're talking at the bar, if we're talking on Zoom for a business.
yeah.
So
There you go. So, yeah, let me pop your site up so give people an example of what we're talking about here. Um,
yes. So Spousely, how I like to explain it is exactly like you said. It's basically like Etsy meets Angie's List, but with a focus on shopping for social good and supporting our nation's heroes. So what's really unique about our site is you can go to Spousely to shop, to buy, products, whether it's candles, custom gifts, woodworking, coffee, whatever it might be. But you also can go on to Spousely to hire a marketing professional, a CPA, a real estate agent, and it's really that one-stop shop to go and support military and first responder owned businesses. So our name is Spousely because our core focus is on helping spouses really navigate, like I said, doing what they love while living a life on the go. But we also have veterans and service members and first responders. And it's really just that, one of a kind place to get to know more than just that product you're purchasing. It's meeting the makers behind the business, sharing their stories, because oftentimes I think people, don't realize, I mean, just how much goes into this lifestyle. And when I launched it, I wanted to make sure it was opened up to first responders, because I feel like, their lives are probably, 10 times harder than even a military life sometimes, because it's every day they're going out and you never know what to expect. Where at least with the military life, it's not very planned, but at least we kind of know, at different times when our spouses are deploying or going to be away. So it's been just an insanely amazing, scary, inspiring journey. I say insanely because, oh my gosh, it's like an insane roller coaster all the time. But I wouldn't trade it for a thing. I want to continue to see Spousely open new doors for others, finding ways that we can continue to expand and grow. We launched Spousely U, which is powered by our partners USAA, which is a great educational component to Spousely, where we're able to help support our vendors, with either setting up their shops or learning about marketing or whatever it might be. It's a great hub for us to keep going above and beyond just that marketplace for
yeah,
shopping.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, it's a great story. I mean, I think anytime you can build a business that relates directly to people and their emotions and what they're trying to do, and again, it's about support and because you can buy products anywhere.
yeah.
So, you know,
And that's something we talk to our vendors about all the time. It's, somebody is going to go purchase a candle from anywhere. They're going to walk into Home Goods, they're going to go to Target, they're going to order online, whatever. But at the end of the day, share with them why this candle on Spousely means so much. Most of the stories, a lot of them are, their spouse was deployed and they needed something to do for, the next 6 months to a year. So a business was born, and those are the type of things that, people love that. They want to learn more about the person behind the brand.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So
Well, that's
I
what
love
it's
it.
all about. I mean, that's the fundamental of building a brand today. You don't
Yeah.
see people that are successful building brands that have no personality or no person to them.
Yeah.
It's really all about that connection.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's been fun. I'm excited to see where everything continues to go, and I absolutely just my favorite thing is learning from other business owners and successful people, because those are the stories that keep me going too.
Yeah. So this was a pretty big undertaking when you think about it, because it's not like just setting up your own website and selling on Shopify or
Yep.
WordPress or whatever. This is really more complex. So what are some of the obstacles you faced along the way?
Yeah, so obviously the biggest piece is with the tech. It has to be able to support, that multi-vendor function, and
Yeah.
with that comes a lot of stuff on the back end. I've actually done an analysis to see, because we're not built off of Shopify, and we get asked that all the time because we're just constantly trying to keep up with new features that improve the customer and the vendor journey. But at the end of the day, we have more bells and whistles from customization and everything that we've poured into it than we would get from Shopify and a multi-vendor site on there. So the biggest challenge has just been, because I am bootstrapping, I don't have unlimited funds to constantly be tackling, if something is needed, or, what maybe we could launch something more innovative to do this. And then the biggest piece is really for us right now is on the consumer side, is on the marketing dollars to continue spreading the word. Because as I mentioned, we haven't had any issues getting vendors on the site, which is amazing, because oftentimes with a marketplace, that's the harder part, is getting people, bought into being a part of your mission. Why should I sell on your platform when I can go sell, on my own website or somewhere else? So we're doing really well there. It's just, how can we keep getting the word out about Spousely? How can we tap into our community so that everyone is our marketing? Everybody's marketing for their own businesses on Spousely. So just the typical growing pains, I feel like, of a e-commerce platform. But the tech is something I'm very, very proud of, because I was able to, completely self-fund that. We have no debt, nothing, which I look at as one of our biggest wins, just because I know so many people that end up getting themselves into the hole, spending $100,000 and stuff, like you were sharing with the app story. And it breaks my heart, because then at the end of the day, they spent all this money and they don't have something that can bring them customers or generate, revenue. So I will say, I am very grateful for just the build that we did and how we did it, because it allowed us to get where we're at.
Yeah. Did you use third-party developers to do it, or did you do it yourself?
No, so I worked with a veteran-owned company actually here in Vegas, and we just, every day it was a lot. Just constantly going back and forth on different functionality and what's going to work, what's not. But it was very important to me, one, to find a military connected web developer that could help me bring it to light, and also to do it here in the US. And that's exactly what we did. There was no beta, nothing. We built it, we continue to scale it, and we're just going.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, the hard part for any business isn't, I had this conversation this morning, actually. It's not about, the functionality and your website and all that. It's about how you're going to get customers. And I've said it
Yeah.
over and over again. You have to figure out a way to differentiate yourself and get people to do it. Sometimes you have to do you have to figure out how to get the message out in a fun way, because people respond to fun, number one, and number two, um, it's less boring that way. Just running ads. I'll give you an example. I have time. A quick story.
Mhm.
We built a razor company a couple of years ago. Actually, more than that. About, I think it's 10, 12 years ago now, after skincare. And we were doing everything that we know how to do. Social media, we were doing SEO, we were doing ads, we were doing everything. It just wasn't working. I mean, we were getting orders, but
Yeah.
not in a big way. And
Right.
we were pounding it for about 6 or 7 months, and it was driving me crazy. And one morning I woke up. I'm a sports fan, and there was a pitcher used to pitch for San Francisco Giants named Brian Wilson. He had an
Mhm.
epic beard, and he had gotten Tommy John surgery, hurt himself, and he got traded to the Dodgers. And he was gonna pitch that night, first time in a year.
Mhm.
And I saw his face, and so I said, I sent an email to his people, to his management, and I said, I want to offer Brian Wilson $1 million to shave with my razor. And they responded back and said, we'll pass this by Brian. And that's
Yeah.
all I needed. I just
Yeah.
needed that one email. Now I'm in discussions. I can say legitimately, I am in discussions with Brian Wilson to shave his beard for me.
Yeah.
I gave that to the PR firm, and it exploded. For
Oh, that's
for the
awesome.
next 10 days, we were all over the place. We were in sports interviews on TV, everywhere for the next 10 days, all around the world, Japan, France,
Wow.
United States, everything. And then we got so many people that were outraged at us. They were mad at us for, how could you give a guy who's a millionaire already $1 million to shave with beard? And they would send us on social media pictures of different body parts that they would shave with a price tag on. I'll
Oh,
shave this for 10,000. I'll shave this for 5,000. And it turned into this whole thing.
yeah.
And but we got a huge amount of orders out of it. Huge. It
Wow.
really is what launched us. And then, as things do, that sort of died out after about 10 days. And TMZ catches Brian Wilson coming out of a gym in LA, and they asked him, are you going to shave your beard? He said, well, I'm
Yeah.
not shaving my beard for anything, for any amount of money. Well, it started all over again, because now people were outraged that he wouldn't take the money. And so, but that type of thing really launched us, because it didn't cost us a lot of money.
Yeah.
It was about, sort of trying to be innovative or thought. And because running ads today, unless you really have something that's going to break
Yeah.
through, unless you have some sort of cool niche that's going to break through, I
Yep.
think you have to always try and do something that's a little bit off the wall, so to speak.
Yeah, I agree. What a great story. And I feel you on that because I mean, our budget for ads is so low as is. So it kind of just keeps, lights on with like retargeting and such. But I see it firsthand. The ads don't really resonate as well as anytime we get opportunities to tell our stories, whether it's, me talking about Spousely or our vendors. But I personally love seeing, and it always goes really well for consumers, is the behind the scenes. People want to see how people actually make products.
Oh yeah.
And it's funny because, the vendors that are really good at, filming and just going with it versus those that, are a little bit more nervous. They're trying to make it perfect. Like, it looks great, but I'll never forget one vendor. She like spilled, I think it was like glue all over what she had was just like hand painting or doing. And that like everybody like loved it. And it was just such a, accident mistake that was, a happy mistake for her because it ended up, getting a ton of views and more people on her brand and everything. But I think the point is people don't like seeing the groomed, even though, he's nice. That guy was very groomed. Like, they want to see the ungroomed. Hey, that's a good way to look at it. This groomed guy, people want to see the ungroomed. So there you
Yeah.
go.
No, it's true. People don't want to see the perfection. They
Yeah.
want to see what you're really all about. They want to see you make mistakes. They don't. They know that they don't want to see it staged. We
Yeah.
tell everybody when we build ads nowadays. If we do a lot of video ads now, and we don't want it to be highly polished. We
Yeah.
want it to be. We want you to be, or whoever the client is, to be doing it with your iPhone, and then
Hmm.
we'll take care of
Yeah.
um, editing it and cleaning it up. But you want to make it fun and exciting, and people want to see exactly. So I think you have an enviable position, because you have all these creators that could
Yeah.
create content for you that you could then
Absolutely.
use to run, whether it's ads or whether it's just posts or whatever you can do with it.
Yeah, I feel like we're finally at like the tip of the iceberg on really seeing like what's working and what's not. And it is anytime we run ads on more of the videos of just like talking about the business or behind the scenes, it does so much better than just like, hey, here's a product, do you want to buy it kind of
Yeah,
thing.
yeah, yeah.
So,
Yeah, that stuff never
anyways,
works anymore. Yeah.
love
So,
that.
um, so we're almost out of time. Any last minute words? Anything about that you could tell young entrepreneurs? Uh,
Yeah.
any kind of words of wisdom, let's say.
Yes, so I always try to get this quote in as many times as I can when I'm talking to somebody because it is so powerful and it's growth begins when comfort ends. And that is something that I am living and breathing and so many other founders or business executives or whatever you might be are truly going through that as well. So growth begins when comfort ends. Write it down, put it on your computer, put it in your mirror, whatever you got to do, but just remember like you are not alone. And I think that's the biggest piece that many of us face is we all often are on our own island, building and
Yeah,
doing whatever we might be doing, that we forget, when you have these conversations or you just sit down with another founder, you're like, wow, I cannot believe that. Like,
yeah,
I'll
yeah,
never forget when I had to set because we're a C Corp, I had to set it up for payroll, and I barely want to take anything because I haven't been paying myself anything. And I'll never forget, she goes, Monica, is this like just like a just because, or like that's not actually what you want to pay yourself, is it? And I'm like, yeah, it's like a really tiny amount. And she was like, I would have never guessed that you were like in the same boat as me, just trying to, survive and build. And I'm like, yes. But it was just such an eye opening moment because she was shocked that I could, I only could and would take this tiny amount of money on a monthly basis.
yeah,
And, it's just one of those things. It's an eye opening experience when you hear the real stories and you just sit down and you talk to people because we can all post our perfect pictures, which I'm not going to lie, we all like to put the more groomed things out there. But I guess we need to go back to how my husband always says that he always hates staged photo. Like when we do family pictures, he hates like the staged ones. He wants like, just captured in the moment or whatever. I'm like, I can't share that one because we're all like, in all the pictures.
yeah.
But it's
But
true.
those are the
And
ones people want to see. I'm with him. I'm not a big fan of
yeah,
staged photos. I like it better
yeah,
especially when the kids. I have 5 kids, and when they were younger, I just think that it was so much better when they were just when you captured the moment versus
yeah,
the staged on the dock by the lake. It's like,
yeah. And that's
nobody
and
cares about that.
going into the new year, that actually is something that is one of my, personal goals is to really just try to like sit back more and enjoy truly just the little moments because I have been removed from mentally from so much over the past few years of growing and building spousely that, I've got twins and they're 7 and never going to get those days back. So I'm trying to find a balance if there's such thing.
You're never going to get those days back. And the next thing you know, you're sending them off to college and you sit
Yeah.
there saying to yourself, what the heck happened?
I know, and I still can't even believe I still look, you know, always to the stars that we got twins, a boy and a girl, because it's
That's
something I always
fantastic.
said I wanted. And the fact that it happened is something that always just is truly incredible.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're out of time, unfortunately. I have to do my closing. So thank you for coming on. I appreciate your taking the time to do this. And yeah, I think what you've got is really good. I like it. I think it's a really innovative way to go. And I think you're going to be very happy over the next couple of years.
Fingers crossed. We are working hard and I appreciate it. Thanks for having me and allowing me to share my story.
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
All right.
All
Bye.
right. See you. Yeah, another interesting story. This one, like I said, I try and bring you interesting ones because you're we don't just want the everyday same old same old. You want to hear, and even Monica said it, right? It's the whole reason we do this show is because we want people to hear reality. You're not going to hear, oh, everything was rosy from day one. We went from 0 to 10 million in sales and had no problems, and here we are today. It doesn't work that way. So, again, you hear it not just from me, you hear it from Monica. Um, Yeah, so I appreciate you taking the time to watch. I appreciate you spending some time with us, and I hope you got something out of it. And again, go to my website. I've got. You can scan this code. You can go to my website, and you can download a business planning guide. If you're a young entrepreneur and you're just starting out, or you have an idea, follow this guide. It's free, and it's really full of great information and a great process. I've honed it over years and years and years of doing startups. So I appreciate it if you would use it. So. All right, and so that's it. That's the end of this show, and we'll see you on the next one. Thank you.